All right. Hi all, welcome to GitLab's 13.7 Team Retrospective and our first ever APAC time zone aligned retro. I'm your host, Donald Cook from the plan stage. We'll be following the same format for this discussion that we've had since around 13.2. We are a little lighter than normal due to our individual retros happening primarily at the end of the year when more than a few folks were out. But we still have some good content to discuss. So like always, we'll start with going over improvements. We are tracking from 13.6. Then we'll go through a couple discussion topics that we saw patterns of from the retro doc. And we'll finish up with talking through improvements we want to track through 13.8. So let's go ahead and get started. Craig, you are here, which is great. You have the first point from improvements that we are tracking.
Yeah. So this one came up from the previous retro. Previously, we had a database maintainer retro to gather feedback on things that are working, areas of improvement, and we identified some low-hanging fruit and implemented some process changes, and we're still iterating on that. And I thought it'd be a good idea to have a similar retro for backend maintainers. The issue has been created. We've already gotten a good amount of feedback so far, and I'm kind of gathering and summarizing the metrics and themes. So the plan is, and I believe Donald's already created a follow-up issue for this, to summarize in our next retro. What themes have we seen? What are we going to do with it, if anything? And yeah, that's it for that. Christopher, you up?
Yeah, we were looking to try to experiment with an APAC friendly retrospective, and lo and behold, we're doing the first one of the year as an APAC retrospective. So that action item is complete. Back to you, Don.
Awesome. All right, John has the next point. It's pretty late for him. I think Jake is online. Yep. Cool.
I can grab these. I'll take the next two. So one thing was we wanted to take action to get engineers involved earlier in the process, in the design stage, and then further left in the product flow. Ended up being, a bigger effort, not something that we are just solved right away, but we're continuing to push on it, especially with the holidays and relatively new PMs to the team. Some things we'll investigate include introducing approvals for issues and epics, then requiring approval by an engineer at different stages of the workflow. There's a good link there in the document about the Gates methodology. Also looked into the Think Big sessions that I think UX does. And we're looking for a way to do those effectively asynchronously with the engineers. And then the next one, in I think the last retro, we had a potential correlation for a hypothesis that planning in 2-week iterations was increasing the number of issues we're closing. After reviewing that and giving it a few milestones worth of data, it doesn't seem like there's a strong correlation, but that perception may be that because we're a greater awareness of what's being delivered when using the iterations, which is not bad. So those are two things. And it looks like Darva's next.
Yes, thank you. Good to be here at APAC time zone. Yay, APAC. So last retro, I discussed creating a survey to gather feedback on the retrospective. So for all of you all who have not taken it, please feel to click on the link and take the survey, and I will share the results with you all next retrospective.
Great. Thanks all. And yes, please click on the link and take the survey. Okay, moving on to our discussion topics. I'll just read off the first one, and then looks like we do have a few discussion points in there, which is great. So first one, how does your team handle backlog refinement? Taken from a topic in the previous retrospective, share tips and best practices with respect to backlog refinement or milestone iteration planning activities. And then I just wanted to switch over to participant mode and include what we do within the plan stage. As Jake said earlier, we are trying to still figure out ways for engineers to be a bit more involved in the refinement process earlier on. We don't really do a deep refinement from the engineering side of things until maybe a few weeks before we actually plan on working on a feature. About a month before the milestone, product creates a planning issue. Then they mark issues that we're thinking about starting in that milestone. And we go through those issues and add weights or break them down. We also have a weekly refinement meeting for each group where we try to look a little ahead of things and discuss whether we need to refine anything again or beyond the initial refinement. Tiago, looks like you had the next point.
I do, thank you. So we've documented a custom process in the handbook. Some of the things that are in there, we've automated, taking advantage of the triage bot, things like we don't add weights to spikes or bugs. So the triage bot looks at that and posts a comment and removes that. Or issues that are ready for development for front end and back end, and they are missing a weight, then it also does the opposite. It warns that you need to add a weight. More recently, we've been discussing, for more complex refinements, we've been discussing perhaps doing almost like a pair programming session where it makes it easier to get a refinement out of the way. Or perhaps when we have too many refinement issues in the backlog, we just get together and hammer them out in a short sync session. And one of the things that we seem to deviate from the general process that I've seen in the company is that we always split front end and back end issues. We've had instances in the past where if it was mixed front end and back end, either side could have missed something. And that's it for us. Back to you.
Cool, thanks. Matt?
Yeah.
Have something?
Sure. Yep. So what we've been doing on my team is to try to refine issues is look each week, kind of do a dive into a small number, maybe 3 to 5 issues. And then all the engineers on the team take a chance to review those, estimate weight, look for collaboration opportunities, look for chances to break it down into smaller iterations. We try to find issues that we know are coming up or are going to be issues that our team is working on. I put a link to our handbook page that explains what we do a little bit. We also have a slightly different approach for a triage bot. Basically, we just label these issues, and then we're working on an automated process that kind of pulls them in and starts an issue for discussion and collaboration.
Cool, sounds great. And Jerome?
So my team does a Kanban process where we actually just set a Slack reminder that pings the channel to do weekly refinement asynchronously. And we just make it really clear that it's everyone's responsibility to ensure that all of the issues are up to date. And then once a month, we do a monthly roadmap planning session. We try to do this synchronously, where we start tagging the milestone with whatever issues we are aiming to ship.
Well, that sounds interesting. Have you had issues where multiple people, or maybe that's not even that big of a deal, but where multiple people are refining the same issue at once? So kind of a similar issue to something we may have on not assigning an issue to like a community contributor?
For the most part, we have pretty well-defined work streams right now across our team members. So it naturally gravitates towards a single team member unless we want to switch that around. And then we just discuss that during some of our sync meetings if someone else wants to take something else over. When it comes to community contributors, if I see that something's not getting picked up, I'll just ping a team member to pick it up.
Great. Make a pretty good time. Anyone else have anything?
One last question. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in who's shared up to this point. How do folks feel about product's involvement and refinement there? Is there any things that you've learned through the process that's helped you or led to better feedback? Let's put it that way.
I will add my comments in the doc. I can speak out. So for our team, our PM help us on the backlog planning a lot. And one way we have been using is we organize our issues in different epics. So by organizing the issues and into epics, we prioritize among those epics that also help us to pick up the item to work on next.
So from the memory and database teams, we just switched product managers. So we were assigned Fabian, and it's been a really interesting experience to have him join the team, because it's kind of the emperor's new clothes syndrome. Like, well, why are you doing it that way? So he's been asking a lot of good questions about what we've been doing in the past and bringing a new perspective on things. So it's been great to have, not to disparage Josh, but he was oversubscribed at the time. So having more dedicated time from product management to help us focus on user impact and product impact on the things that we're working on. So I appreciate Fabian joining the team. It's been great.
Yeah, similarly on the product planning group within Plan, Kristen just moved over as the PM of that group. And it's also the same thing, Craig, where it's interesting getting a new perspective on how we do project management or product management at the team level. It's also interesting with us being the plan stage on figuring out like the balance between dog fooding our tool, but also like maybe following some like set project management processes that other tools are kind of known for doing or for advocating. So that's always an interesting thing. Is dog fooding how we project management. Okay, so does anyone else have? Well, actually, there are a couple more points on here, and I think we still have a minute or two.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up and say, what are the insights, actionable insights have come out of the different perspective of having a new product manager?
Yes, I can answer and stop typing because I can't do two things at once. So Fabian brought in or introduced us to the RICE framework, and it's in the handbook. I'll add a link to it here. Was it Reach, Impact? I'm going to forget the other two, but it's a way to score our big initiatives in our backlog, and we're focusing at the epic level so that we can understand what's the most important thing for us to work on. So we have introduced that to our planning processes. I didn't put anything in the comments above because database and memory teams are not feature teams. And a lot of times we'll get things that are not very well defined, and we refine them as we're going through the milestone. Like big one that we just worked on was image scaling. Like how do we dynamically, or how do we cut down the size of the images that we are rendering? And it took a lot of research and time. So we just have different processes that we refine throughout. So having the RICE framework to better understand what we should first pick up. And then actually we are going to experiment with the process that Fabian has implemented with the Geo team as more of a Kanban style of picking up individual issues rather than strictly looking at the project boards where you have milestones, where it's a little bit harder to understand what's the next most important issue to pick up. So it's a process we're reviewing right now on both of those teams. And I look forward to experimenting with it probably in a subsequent milestone.
Awesome. Okay, we're running short on time for this question, and I want to get to the second one. And there might not be as much discussion, so we can circle back to this one to continue if there is time remaining. But moving on to the second topic, 13.7 was a transition milestone for a few of the newly expanded teams. Does anyone have any learnings to discuss around onboarding new team members, specifically that are coming in from other teams internally? Diego, you had the first point there.
Thank you. So in threat management, we deal with two separate groups. We handle container security and threat insights. So we had people coming in from different groups and switching groups within. So we took the opportunity to review our onboarding issues and split them to better fit the roles. We also encouraged the new members to hold coffee chats with every other person in the team. That wasn't easy to do for some people. Some time zones were challenging, so we're looking for better suggestions there. Wayne did suggest an asynchronous coffee chat where he just asked questions back and forth over a couple of days. That was kind of cool. And lastly, we just considered the hit of on delivery of supporting the people coming in, assigning the buddies and making sure that questions were answered and the new people felt like they had the answers to the problems. That's it for us.
Cool. Craig?
Yeah, Bartek, putting him on the spot here, did a similar process for his incoming team members. He was a recipient of a bunch of new team members, and he invited me to review some of the onboarding templates that they had and add any suggestions. And I know that he and his team encouraged those new team members to continually revise that process to make sure it was better for the next person. So I thought Bartek did a good job of bringing new team members in.
I think also one of the things that we did is we updated the handbook page for realignments to bring in some of the learnings from the transitions that we did. So feel free to further update that page if we feel that the feedback that we're getting from team members isn't covered in there. But there was an MR that made the rounds a few weeks back to do that. And Craig, yes, thank you for reviewing those templates. A bunch of people came in and suggested that, and I think the feedback that I've had from the individuals affected was that the onboarding was extremely smooth and able to get them up to speed quite quickly.
That's a suggestion, is if you have an onboarding template and you have the feeling that you're going to have either some new hires coming in or potentially other ways, asking another engineering manager to jump in and just kind of run through it is a convenient way to do it. So I'd recommend it for anybody who's thinking about it.
Yeah, I agree. That is a great idea. Jerome?
Sorry, I was just finishing up typing. A few things. Just having that onboarding issue that the other team members mentioned before, I think identifying what those tasks are and creating those issues and working through the first milestone with the engineer to make sure that they're able to accomplish it. That's really important. And the other one is just staying really closely in sync with the previous manager, which that engineer might have transferred from, so that career development and performance reviews are all transitioning smoothly. And just a shout out to Donald, thank you for helping with Axel's transition and staying closely in sync on all of those.
Yeah, definitely. Darva?
I would just add that I observed there was a lot of relationship building going on across the entire stage between PMs, EMs, SET, designers. There were just so many new roles that were involved in just learning more about each other and how each other works and what's important to one another to kind of start off the foundation. Matt?
Right. One of the things that we made sure to do during the transition time is document and update the handbook and making sure it was up to date, which it definitely was not. So making sure we got everything there and just kind of helped current people on the team explain processes and how things worked to new people and help the new people learn a little bit faster. Plus it was a better transparent way of having that documented somewhere.
Cool. And CZ?
Yeah, we had the code walkthrough sessions by senior team members to the new team members to help them getting familiar with the code. And also we encouraged the new team members to pair with others and to ramp up their knowledge. There were always virtual team happy hours to socialize among the team.
Great. And I'll just vocalize Jerome's +1 on pairing sessions. Okay, let's move on to the last section, improvements that we want to track. We'll go through and verbalize all of these, starting off with Craig.
Yep. So by the next retrospective, I hope to have a summary of the retro for all the backend maintainers and some actions, and maybe even some of the actions complete by then. So yep, it's all in the issue there. John?
Sure, yeah, I'll verbalize for John. As mentioned, kind of continuing on investigating ways to move engineers further back in the earlier stages of design and refinement, which I actually got some good ideas from the discussion topic. So this was effective retro and maybe using some of the triage bots and things that other teams are using. So excited to track that, and hopefully by next time we'll have made a little bit more progress.
All right, I'll take the next one. I will just share the results of the survey. And if there's some actionable items, maybe create some issues.
Cool. And the last one is open to feedback, but I'm thinking about, since this one was light, granted it was the first of the year, but if we then wait till February and see it's light again, then that becomes a trend. So just asking engineering managers to take their retrospectives and at least find 2 comments in 2 different areas of the 4 areas being praised, what went well, what went wrong, and improvements for next time, and add them just to see some good participation level. And it can be literally anything, even if it is team specific focused. And if that leads to a huge praise section that we talk about, that's fine from that perspective. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and there's definitely nothing wrong with having a huge praise section. Cool. Well, unless anyone has anything else, we will end a few minutes early. Thanks all for joining, for participating.